Rugby Coach Weekly, moving up coaching, and we're going to focus on under 12s. My background is I've been coaching for 30 years. I took my son through from under 6s to under 16s. I do quite a lot of CPD with coaches who are working with new rules of play, and also working with the Bristol Bears Junior Academy, under 14s to under 16s, and University of Bristol Women, amongst a few other various roles in and around coaching. The focus on tonight is 4 areas: the new laws, but we can probably really call them the new rules of play, and the differences between under 11s and under 12s, and how that's going to impact on the way you coach and the approach. My idea really is not to give you absolutes, but to offer up a few challenges to perhaps the way that you're coaching at the moment, and suggest some different ways, but also maybe confirm some of the things you're doing already. So you're thinking, yeah, I'm doing that, so I'll keep on doing that. There are no absolutes in what I'm going to say, other than obviously we need to make sure that our coaching is safe. In terms of new key skills to focus on, the most important thing here is to make sure that we are being effective in what we're doing and not over emphasizing the tactical approach. Now, we are going to talk about tactics because under 12s in particular, with the size of the pitch and the age of the players, there will be some tactics involved, and tactics will help us shape how we play the game, but also shape what skills we want to focus on. And I want to do a little bit around about what you can expect the under 12s to be able to do, how you might deal with them on a training basis, and some of the ideas around coaching and games. So I think the first thing to do, we've got to think about what it's going to look like at the end of the season. And it's not always what we think it should look like. Now, you may have had a chance to talk to some under 12s coaches from last season at your clubs, and they're going to give you some idea. But even then, their view will be still slightly narrow, because when they look back and reflect, they will see that in a journey of a player, so here's time, and let's say we're going to get a player to maybe under 16 to under 18s, and this is when they'll be playing what we would call probably the rugby that we would see roughly on the television to a certain extent. Now, where are our players on this journey now? Well, they're on their way here, and the journey is obviously not linear. It moves up and down, and we're around about here. So what does that look like? Well, first of all, we're going to have a little bit more space on the pitch, because scrums are going to have 5 players in. So that's going to give a little bit more space. There's going to be a few more players on the pitch. But the game will be limited, because one of the key reasons is the number 9's pass. And that's going to impact on the speed of the game and the space we're going to have. Now, why I think we need to make sense of their journey is that the season needs momentum. And I'm going to talk about blocks. Don't look at the season at the end, when they're just about to transition to under 13s. Think about them, right, what do we want to achieve by our first game? What's our first game going to look like? Then what's our game going to look like by half term, Christmas, half term, and then when we get to Easter, we might be into tournaments and festivals and away days and that sort of thing. So let's look at that in terms of what's going to look like in our first game. What skills do we want to have introduced and worked on that are going to make a difference for our first game? And let's build on those to half term, build on those to Christmas. The difficulty is, or the trouble is, that we often think we need to have a complete player. So this is my rough version of a player. We want to have the complete player by the start of the first game. But actually, let's pare that back and look at some of the core skills that we want to do, and some of the things that they need to have in their mind in terms of tactics at this stage. And the tactics will develop as the game goes, as the season goes on. Winning definitely matters. You want to turn up to every game, thinking about how you might win a game, but it's not about the score. You don't turn up on the pitch to lose, and I think that's the way you want to picture it. We're not here to lose, we're here to make the best of what we can, and that means looking at not the score, but at various aspects we've been concentrating. In terms of our skills, have we been executing our skills a bit better than we have been last week? Are we using and combining our skills to look to score tries, even if we're not scoring tries, and also to stop tries? That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get the players in positions where they can make more attempts at scoring tries. Now, the things are going to be conspire against us to score tries, whether the referee and, of course, the opposition. More importantly is, have we made more progress, or have we made progress? And that's why winning matters in terms of developing as players and as teams. And that's why we want to focus on player development, recognizing that each player's journey as a player is not linear. They're not moving up like this. They are moving at different paces as they grow, as they change, as they understand the game, and probably because players are going to be joining you as the season goes on. Players may be dropping out. So what's different? You're probably pretty wise to the fact that there's quite a change, because there's going to be more players on the pitch. 12 players, 5-man scrums. These are quite significant changes for you as a team. And the other main area, which I think will make a difference, is unlimited numbers at the ruck and the maul, but I don't think we maul as much as we ruck. And this is going to have significant differences in decision-making on the field. Now, I don't want to overplay decision-making, because this is hard. It's hard for these players because of their awareness of the game. There's no magic wand which makes players more aware. We have to set up our training and our language to constantly reinforce the game and what it looks like. Now, we don't want to be talking it through. We want to try and give them scenarios on the pitch. So I'm going to talk a little bit later about creating scenarios and splitting up the game. But we might say, for instance, if we have, let's say we've got a squad of 15, for instance, let's set up a scenario. We've got 9 players here, 6 players here, and there is a breakdown here where we've got 3 players in versus 1 player. What's going to happen next? Let's go through and play this through and see what happens. So the players start to understand, this is where I've got to stand. This is what I've got to do next. So let's build the awareness as the season goes on. Remember, I said winning matters. This awareness is about how we score tries or stop tries, and players need to know, how does this help me, or help us score a try? What's my role in this? Now, it's not every player is going to score tries. You'll probably look back on a last season and some players were scoring dozens of tries, and 1 or 2 players never even came close to scoring a try. What's their role? Let's celebrate that. The Fen comes in now. I think that's probably a good thing, because it causes so many problems with players not really knowing to stop, to keep their hands in. It's below the armpit, not to the face. I think that's probably quite hard to do in terms of making an effective Fen, but it does mean that we get away from the problems of refereeing that area. There's no kicking rule anymore. I'm not sure how much it was applicable last year, but under 11s, if a player caught the ball on the full, They could call a mark. If they dropped it, it was a scrum in their favor. There was various advantages. We're going to focus on those in when we talk about the skills. Now, new tackle laws are relevant more so for the older age groups. You won't have been tackling too much above the ball, but the focus is generally there's the ball, there's the player on the ball moving forward, and as they move forward, our players have got to be focusing on tackling below the ball. How does that work as a skill? Well, make it a positive. If a player goes high, don't talk about the negatives, or that's going to be a penalty. Talk about what can we do differently? How can we change it? What are we going to focus on here? Now, at this age, one of the difficulties they have is because they don't have strong cores, they're not yet in charge of their bodies so much. We want the players to be bendy at the hips and bendy at the knees as much as possible when they're making tackles, and that's what we've got to focus on. A key focus is on this here. If the shin is downwards facing, it tends to mean the player is getting lower. Most of our focus is on tackling below the ball. Let's be exact in our skills. Let's talk about getting this right by the head position and the shoulder below the ball. With 5-player scrums, you'll need to have more players who can scrummage. My advice is from under 11s right through to under 16s is the more players you can get involved in learning how to have a scrum profile, the better for the team. And I think that you should be focusing on scrum profiles every session. You should definitely do tackling, but scrum profiles every session, whether the players are identifying as forwards or not. That is important. You want, it would be lovely if you had a situation where you had 2/3 or 80% of the squad who can scrum. They don't have to scrum, but they can scrum. It's still no push. There is a strike for the ball. Contact focus is going to be big this year because there is more players who are going to be involved in the contact area. One of the questions I'm often asked is, how can I make my players more aggressive in this area? I don't think you can teach aggression so much, but you can make them more confident. And a player who's confident is more likely to get involved. This is a skill I can use. So let's work on what I think is, here's a player presenting the ball. This is a key area. So there's a player probably in a jackknife position. I'm very keen that that is the go-to position. But players not arriving at this position and what we might call sealing off. That means that they are arriving and they're sort of in this position. They're there and then they're there. They are resting on the player on the ground. It's illegal. It doesn't seem to be picked up that much. I would get these players moving on and past the ball. So real skill focus is arriving and getting beyond the ball in a low position. Absolutely key is you want to develop as many players who've got a 9 pass, who can get the ball away from the contact area quickly and with length. Probably 1 or 2 players will be natural 9s. I'll talk a bit about how we can develop 9s a bit later on, but get them working on their passing and encourage passing away from training. And passing which looks like the game. So it's got to be off the ground, passing off the ground. So as much as possible, these players are arriving and then being able to pass off the ground. Handling focus, I like to talk about trying to encourage a rate of passing. That means that you get lots of passes in the game. I think we can probably get too worried about taking the ball up to a defender and then passing. Let's try and pass a bit earlier. Let's give problems to defenses a bit wider out. So encourage the players to let's get more passes in. I'm not worried if we're not fixing too many players. Let's get passes in. Partly because you've got 12 players on the pitch. And if you've got 12 players on the pitch, you want them to be touching the ball more often. I think you should start to think tactically, but it shouldn't be too much about tactics. But you should think that from a scrum, you've got 5 players engaged in the scrum. And that means there'll be a bit more space on the pitch. So there's 5 stuck in there, plus a 9, plus a 9. So there's more space on the pitch. I wouldn't do too complicated here, but let's see if we can get this ball passed out to this last player here on the wing. Will they be number 14 if their numbers on their back and they're playing 15 aside, and these players supporting that. Let's work on that. Let's spend some time on that, thinking about that. Let's make our players think about why we kick. If only to ask questions. If we're in this area of the pitch, why are we doing it? So yes, in training, let's have kicking. Let's do it in training. Let's think about that. I've got some games in which we can do about kicking strategy. But the attack strategy is what I want to focus on. And that is that from a ruck, we need to have some defined first receivers. Now, normally, it would be 9 to 10. And I'm going to talk about this in play later on. Let's have a defined first receiver and play off this player. Rather than having someone taking the ball up, let's have 10 and then 10 passing on. So it just means that more players are involved in the game. Now, there's a famous saying around a player who used to play for Australia called Mark Ella. Best player on the pitch, even at international level, he was fantastic. And he often said this. He said, now, if I touch the ball once, we'll probably score. If I touch it twice, we will score. And if I touch it 3 times, I will score. In other words, let's get our 10s passing, but looking for a second touch. And if they get a third touch, well, they've got a really good chance of scoring. The difficulty is, and you'll see lots of sides do this, the best player will stand in this channel here, and they will take the ball up. They're probably big, they've got a chance of knocking players over. Let's encourage more passing. The other tactical focus is there is the free pass. And the free pass is for lineouts. It's still in for penalties that, well, you can kick for a touch, but the free pass. Now, my thought is that you have player A, two players, A and A. And A will always pass to B. So you stay before the start of a game. I'm going to allocate 2 players, your A and A. So whoever's the 2 A's, one will pass to the other. So you've got free pass from different situations. Let's use it. Let's take that free pass, but let's not do anything too complicated. Notice how A and A are standing flat. A doesn't stand deep, they stand almost next to the other player. Short pass, then a pass to B who's running onto the ball. So shape of training. As I said, scrummaging, 5 minutes every session should be on profiles. That could be part of the warm-up. You should be spending some time also taking the forwards off to spend 5 minutes on scrummaging. So using their profiles again, get them to scrummage. I think 1v1's hard at this age because it's hard for them to keep their balance. So let's use a bit more, say, 1v2s. So you've got 1 player scrummaging against 2, or 2 scrummaging against 3, like this. So they get the chance to work on their body shapes, their scrum profiles, and then maybe build it up from that. You could have 2v1 with 2 behind and 1 behind here. Now, this player in here, this is a more experienced scrummager perhaps, so they're going to be under a bit more pressure. But these are things which could help the players become stronger at scrummaging. So 5 to 10 minutes on scrummaging, with probably only taking the forwards away for 5 minutes, but every session. I'm going to come back to play in a moment. You're going to be spending a lot of time on skills. So tackling. Build tackling every session. This is where your blocks work. For week 1, concentrate on one thing. My go-to number 1 is go work on the grip. So you spend this week, we're going to concentrate on making sure our grip, how tight we are when we make the tackle. The next week, we might work on footwork to get close. And then week 3, we might concentrate on the finish. So that's the leg drive and the tight grip to finish the tackle. And we're going to go back, and the next week we're going to focus on grip. Now you'll need footwork and finish to do this, but this is what you're going to be focusing on, the tackling element of training. And then by game 1, you might say, we're going to make sure, or we're going to look and see how many players are effectively making a good grip in the tackle. You might say, well, we've cracked the grip, we're going to look at footwork, or lots of players have cracked the grip, we're going to look at footwork. But that's the block, that's the season momentum building up. We're going to focus on this. And then by the game 5, let's see how good our finishing is. That's how we build skillful players around tackle. And the same can be going for handling. Block 1, let's focus on our catch. Can we get an early catch? Can our players get their hands out to catch the ball early? And can we pass in front? That could be the 2 key things that you keep coming back to. You're doing exercises, you're challenging them, you're giving them a bit of skill reminders, and you keep going back. We'll work on a catch. How many players can catch the ball early when it counts? Game 1, how many times did we catch the ball early? I counted 30 times that we caught the ball early in that game. That's fantastic. That's 30 out of 46. That's brilliant. Some of the ones we had the catch on our chest. That's fine. That's sometimes we're going to do. Can we catch more early? How many passes do we get in front? How many times we pass the ball in the game? These are things that we can make targets. These are our wins. At the end of the game, we caught the ball early lots of times and that. How does that help us score tries? It helps us score tries because we can catch early, we can pass the ball early. So there's a big focus on skills. And of course, skills will be key in terms of getting the breakdown rate good. Number 1 for me is the hierarchy of contact. Now, as you move through the ages, your hierarchy becomes more and more sophisticated. I've got to remember to cross things out on this. The hierarchical contact becomes more and more sophisticated. But the first one is, can we pass before contact? So why are we running into contact? With the players tackling, no, we want to try and avoid contact, but sometimes we're going to have to take contact. So can we pass out of contact? And then we're talking about, this is a term I picked up recently, ball toughness. How tough are we on the ball? Can we keep the ball? So that is falling to ground and maybe pass on the fall, but great ball placement. How good's our ball placement? I reckon that's a game 1 check. Were we placing the ball back securely? And if we were, that is great. We tick that off. So ball placement. On the site, talk a lot about jackknife, the idea that the players are turning at the hips and passing the ball back to their teammates like that, ball placement. Then we're going to be looking at players arriving and clearing out. And this is where play is really important, because that's very dynamic. These players arriving have got to be dynamic. So we've got to have lots of games in training. Now, the games have got to look like the game. There are some games where we can do things which are slightly unusual, but most of the time, 95% of the time, it has a rugby ball. 95% of the time, you pass backwards. 90% of the time, there is one try line for the team, because that's what the game looks like. We've got so little time with them. We need to build their awareness. Their awareness of the game comes from playing things which look like the game. And that's why we need to set out scenarios. We don't always, I was talking to some guys last night on Tuesday. They've got 3 teams at under 30s. So they can probably play what looks like a full game. But even then, you don't have the numbers. Slice up the game, make it look like the game. Let's start the game with a tackle here. There's a tackle here. What's going to happen next? Let's play with overload. Sometimes we're going to have, say, 9 attackers versus 6 defenders. Sometimes we're going to have 9 defenders versus 6 attackers. Can those defenders win the ball back? Can we do things like that? So kids come along to learn some skills, become more confident in the game, more confident in tackling, more confident in contact, more confident in passing. We need to do this. We need to get some repetitions in. That's not boring standing in lines, but let's get, have you caught the ball 20 times in the last 5 minutes? Great, because you're just getting a chance to think about that. So let's do that. But then let's put it into games and give them lots of touches in games. Lots of touches in them. So my shape of training at under 12s. I don't spend any time on fitness. Yes, you do some warming up, you activate the players, but the fitness comes in putting pressure in on the skills, but the fitness comes in playing games where you're pushing the players. So time in training. Let's say you've got 90 minutes, warm up, activation, that's 10 minutes with some games. Then the skills element of it is probably 30 minutes with some scrummaging and some profile work. And then the rest of the session, the 30 minutes, is versions of the game. Versions which are bringing the skills in, and they're looking to use that, those sort of game awareness things. Here we are on the pitch. How are we stopping tries? How are we scoring tries? So, build your season in blocks. What's our game going to look like by the first? What's going to look like by the first game? And then it's called sprints. For those of you working in technology, you're probably using sprints all the time. So we sprint to our first game, and then we look, and then we say, right, we've achieved this. Let's sprint to half term. But let's not forget what we've done, but let's build on what we've done. Let's play as many games as we can in training that get the players more awareness. Now, if we play a game on a massive pitch, then you've got big forwards running at small players. This is not going to help their confidence. So let's get this pitch right down to a very short pitch or even a very narrow pitch. So the players have a chance to work on how they're feeling, how they're sensing that contact. Under 12s, passing is difficult. The 9s have got a short pass. Let's work on those 9s, but the 10 has got to get that pass away as well. So this passing rate, let's get these 3 passes away. Yes, we're probably going to lose a bit of ground here. So we've got to take a bit of a hit on that. But the more that these players get used to passing, the more that they'll get used to being involved in the game, and more players are involved. So that's the democratization of the game. More decisions by more players, even if that's a word. And in terms of team management, absolutely every player should have close to equal game time. And if not exactly game time, I wouldn't even change the players at half time. Over the years, certainly working with the Mumbles guys, we just numbered the players off when they arrived. And let's say we had 16 players at the game. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 16 players, 4 players aren't starting. So 1, 2, 3, you're off. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, you're on. And then after 5 minutes, 1, 2, 3, 4, you're on. 5, 6, 7, 8, you're off. because we have trained lots of players into the scrum. I mean, obviously we're going to make sure we mix these guys up a little bit, so we're not taking off too many players who play in specific positions. Perhaps we're going to give these players plenty of chances. So it might be that your number 1-9 is not on the pitch. So that's great. Someone else gets a chance. And maybe that 9, when he comes back on, the other 9 who's been on stays on there and he moves around. So as much as possible, you want to move players around. And that happens in training as well. So I'm going to jump onto the last screen. This is going to be the last bit. In games, whatever you say, let's say you've got an 8v8 game. My preference is to play overload games, but let's have you say they've got an 8v8 game. Nominate in each team, one player is 1-9 on one first receiver. 1-9, one first receiver. And for the next 5 minutes or for the next 3 minutes, whatever happens, every time there's a breakdown, this is the only player who can pass away. This is the only player who can be first receiver. And then swap them around. So it gives players a chance to start thinking tactically, players who become the first receiver, and then you can give the first receiver things that they must do. First receiver, you can't take contact, you've got to pass. Or first receiver, you've got to try and get 2 touches or 2 engagements. And that sort of helps build their awareness of the game. So as you can see, going right back to this slide here, building on last season, what are the new laws? My key point is you're spending a lot of this season building awareness by constantly reinforcing what the game looks like, not to win at all costs, but to understand that in order to win a game, you need to score tries. So how does this help us score tries? How does this help us stop tries? And then this awareness comes in the game. That's me finished on the formal part of this presentation. So, guys, feel free to jump in if you want to with some any questions, or I will finish there. I shall stay on until anyone wants to finish or ask any questions.
I'm not sure. I referee as well. So it's a and I was interested in your comments about the rucking.
Yeah.
Arriving at a tackled. You're arriving to support your tackled player.
Yeah.
And then driving over the ball. I have seen players, teams coaching. They arrive. They grab hold of the player on the ground,
yeah.
And then the joining in. You said something about arriving and not driving over being illegal. Was that because they're generally not supporting their body weight, or?
Yeah. So So there's the player on the ground, and it is it is an area of debate. So it's potentially illegal because yes, they can be in this sort of position here when their hips are above their shoulders, and then they're grabbing the player on the ground. That often happens. That is definitely illegal. But even then, when this is more, you can't quite tell. It's still technically illegal to grab the player on the floor, but it's not refereed. And so, though I would perhaps argue with others over it, I'm not so worried about that. But what I do think is that it slows your game down. And what happens is players arrive and they just sort of stop at the ball.
Yeah.
And therefore, the ball is stuck here. Any player who arrives will drag this group here. This group here will be dragged backwards.
Yeah.
So you're much better off the first player arriving getting beyond the ball.
Mm-hmm.
And that is also positive because if they arrive low in this strong profile position, they can contact this player coming in, and that gives them that they're more dynamic. And then the next player, if they can't clear the ball, they'll stop at the ball, but they'll be also in this position as well. So that ball is free for the 9 to get away.
So yeah, my second point, or the coaching point on that was coaching to ensure that the ball in that situation doesn't come out the back, so that there's still a ruck, and it's not open play. Now, as a coach and ref, I would mostly be saying, well, yes, they haven't technically controlled it, but they were only 11, 12 years old. It's not really for it to be open play, but that's not always the case as other refs or other coaches. So how do we get them to the first support players driving over? We need the second player to bind on, but to be able to control the ball within the back foot, so that it's not.
So and exactly you've got a situation here where you have some risk and rewards. So the risk is that this player here doesn't effectively plant their feet to protect that ball, and so someone can come around, someone who's aware from the opposition can come around to pick the ball up, and that's going to happen. So there's a risk, but the reward is this: you may lose that ball, let's say 2 or 3 times in a game if it doesn't work. On the other hand, that ball is then available for you to clear. Now, the more that you can get your players to think, first player definitely gets beyond the ball. If that ball's there free to pass, I pass. Or whoever gets there next passes the ball away. So you don't really want to be stopping here. You don't want to be creating a ruck which is there forever. It'll be like creating the box kick England game. You want to be creating a situation where that ball is away super fast. So as much as possible, you're playing in these scenario games. A player, however you want to say the tackle happens, let's say it's touched and tackled, that ball is presented. You're going to play a game where you'll say, if that ball is not away in the count of 3 seconds, this attacking team loses a life. Okay, so it's not away within 3 seconds, you lose a life. You lose 3 lives, it's an immediate turnover. And now the players are thinking, if I don't get that ball away before the coach counts 1, 2, 3, life lost, they're going to be, I'm going to get the ball away. So they start to think, let's clear that ball away, because this is creating the game awareness. Because otherwise, what is going to happen is this first player arrives, job done. This player arrives, job done. And jobs are done. The ball is there. Every job is done. There's no urgency to get the ball away. Let's create the reward from a slightly higher risk and it's only a slightly higher risk because remember, you're playing against teams which may only have 1 or 2 players who are aware of this. And this player here doesn't do his job of get that ball away. And so we're going back to blocks. The blocks here, first game, our target is we're going to have 5-second rucks. We want to get the ball away within 5 seconds of a tackle being made. And it depends on your parent group, but I've certainly seen it happen that we've found parents who are, right, okay, we're watching a game. I want you to be thoroughly involved in the game. Your son is on the pitch and they're playing scrum half. So they want every chance to get that ball away. So count how many times we didn't get the ball away within 5 seconds. And then they can say, there were 2 times. Great. 2 times is good. There were 5 times. 5 times, that's too many. Or we got it away 20 times or 13 times or something like that. So it becomes a part of the block that we want to get that ball away a bit faster because the players are aware. At half time, we're focusing on two things. We want to get the ball away. How many times did we did it? Do you think we did it? 5, 10, 12 times. 12 times we did. That's great. Can we do it again? Not as many, because you don't know how many rocks you're going to have. But if we have 10 rocks, how many do we want to aim for? And they'll say 5. And then half term, it's 4 seconds. And then Christmas, it's 3 seconds. And then by the time you get to the Easter festival, you're absolutely blown away every side because it's on the floor for 2 seconds. And no one can say that's the best drilled side in the world. It's only because they live in fear of the count of 2 seconds. They can hear the coach talking. Sometimes what I've done with teams is I say, if you get 9 out of 10 away within 3 seconds in this game, so 90%, I will do 20 push-ups. And I can tell you, the effort to get me to do 20 push-ups is well worth their paying to do it. They love seeing a coach suffer. Now, I wouldn't offer, I mean, you may be a 20 push-up sort of a guy anyway, but I never was. So anyway, I've rattled there a bit. Does that make sense in terms of what I'm trying to achieve with that?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it addresses what I was asking. It sort of addresses a whole bunch of things really, which it is that you talked about getting it through the hands quickly, so sort of number of passes, but also getting it out to the first receiver and then from the base of the ruck quickly as well. That's on that particular one. That's really useful. Thank you.
Well, there's another thing which you can take a bit of a risk with, and you may be surprised at the success of this. Is that you play a game and you say to the first receiver, when you get the ball, you have to pass, but you cannot look where you're passing.
Problem is, I'll be yelling at them for the rest of the time to look where they're passing.
Yeah, you will be. But I mean, generally, it's you're forcing something which is so unusual for them. They won't do too many no-look passes. But what do you think then happens? What happens next? Do you think may happen, which might be good? I mean, there's going to be some
the first receiver will just flick it on.
Step on.
Yeah, but so what will the second receiver do?
Be there, prejudging them already there.
Yeah. And we talk about awareness, and as players play more, they start to stand at the right sort of distance away. So it gets to the stage where 9, and not under 12s, but if you play senior rugby, the 9 does not look at 10. In fact, if we want the internationals this weekend, say from a line out in particular, but often from a scrum, 9 will pass to here, a space here where nobody is, because they'll know 10 will get there. Or 10 does a massive miss pass. So this no look here means that 12 will start to find this distance here, or the second receiver, and 10 will pass their normal pass. You're just passing a normal pass. And it's incredible, certainly with older players, but this is a risk one. Definitely you need to be looking where you're passing. I'm not saying don't look, but try just a challenge for them, maybe for a better player. And I tell you what, they really concentrate on making that pass. Far more than they would normally. Would you try it? Or is it too risky? What do you think? By the way, there's no absolutes here. This is just challenges. And it very much depends on your group and the confidence they have.
I think those kind of things are always worth a try. It's worth a try, see what happens, adapt, see what's in front of you, and then adapt from there.
Yeah.
I'm always, because you just don't know, and you're saying different groups will have different experiences.
And another way it's a really good chance to do something which I've started to do a bit more this season is ask them what might go wrong. You ask them before what might go wrong. We're going to put extra pressure on you. What might go wrong? And they would say, we're going to make some mistakes. What mistakes might you make? And they might say, the second receiver might drop the ball. So you might say, okay, so if the second receiver drops the ball, we're not going to say anything about that. We're just going to look at ways to improve it. So I'm not going to call it out. We're not going to worry about it. What other mistakes might they? They might not call for the ball. Okay, so, but that's fine. If they don't call for the ball, they're probably not going to get it. So we identify the mistakes. So if they make the mistake, a player doesn't say, oh, I've made a mistake. They just say, I made a mistake, which we think was going to happen. But they're now thinking about how they can get around mistakes. So if we're playing games where we are fault correcting stuff that they've not thought about beforehand, that's when they get nervous. And we can give them chances to understand where they may go wrong, build confidence, and if they go wrong, that's fine. We knew that was going to happen.
Mm.
And again, we talk about question I'm often asked is, where is it? Talked about how can we? Our players aren't aggressive enough. So there's no magic button, but aggression comes, or what we might call aggression, the positive aggression, comes from confidence. The ability that you can commit because you feel that it's going to be right. You've done it lots of times, you've had a go at it, and you know that you know the things which might go wrong, but you know the coach is not going to give you a hard time. The coach is going to say, I'm delighted that you went for it. I'm delighted that we made 4 passes and we got to the winger, but the winger got smashed. But we knew that the winger might get smashed, but we gave them 4 passes. Why are we doing 4 passes? Well, we're doing 4 passes to score tries. How does that score us tries? Well, we might get outside the defense. Well, we didn't do it that time, but we didn't get outside the defense. We knew that the winger might get smashed. Well, we don't, not smashed. Smashed is the wrong word, of course. We might use different language. We knew that this, yet we tried something out. So I don't know, Rupert, how's this sounding for you? What is there stuff that you want to add in, or?
No, I think that's great. I think the other things, I'm a lot a very small team, and we are battling to keep our under trying to. We didn't manage to keep an under 12s last year. We've got to try and do it. Just dynamic with school rugby and various other things. Just a small country team, but part of my challenge as kind of lead coach is always that, and I think you cut into it, is that balance with smaller side of giving enough people so that when we come up in festivals and things, giving the chance to try out different positions, but also having some level of specialization, because we kind of need it. And I found that even last year, trying to give someone saying, right, you're going to be scrum half, but then if I was critical of myself, sometimes I was making them scrum half too much of the time, such that when they were away, there was nobody else. So it's that balance with a small side, that specialization versus, you almost got it there, democratization of everybody doing it. And it's a hard one. I don't think there's an easy answer. I just think it's.
Well, I would say that 9 is an unusually crucial position that probably by the age of 12, you're going to be playing, someone's going to be playing 9 more often, and you need to have a number of players who can play it, because there's always someone who's off ill or at a wedding, at a birthday party or something like that, that they're not there. So that's why in this scenario here, in the training games, I try and give lots more players to have a go at 9. Sometimes there's players that you don't want to put them in at 9 because they don't want to play it. It's just not something they want to do. They're uncomfortable, so fine. But you're going to give players more chances in these games. You can say what might go wrong, and then I mean, particularly they're going to struggle off their weaker hand, which is probably their left hand. Something I focus on is very simple 9 skills a lot, which is the get the players to, every time there's the ball, and I just say arrive, sit and shoot. Don't say that too fast on a Sunday after a heavy night on Saturday. Sit, shoot. So if they sit at the ball, that means that they're probably going to bend more effectively. And if they then shoot their hands, so if you can see on the screen, if I shoot my hands, you can see my wrists get into action. And I won't necessarily spin it, but I've got more chance if I shoot my hands towards.
That's exactly one of the things we've had the issue of, and actually, I mean, I can reflect on it because what one of those children is my son. Even though I was a forward, he's very much a scrum half, more of a scrum half, smaller, flexible. But actually, if I was not critical, one of the things we've had is they get to the ball, but then they do that loopy pass.
Yeah.
You know, one of those passes which you're kind of closing your eyes, going, hopefully nobody's going to intercept it, but you need that speed of pass away.
Yeah,
we've got the players to run onto it, but we've got 2 or 3 scrum halves, but they all do the similar thing. So yeah, that sit and shoot is an interesting one because it's really trying to get them to understand, get your hands to that ball and then fire that ball away.
yeah, and because they've sat, they get themselves in a lower position. The ball's roughly in the middle of their feet. Now, obviously, the more sophisticated scrum halves will move the ball closer to one foot than the other. But here's the player bending down to get the ball. But because they've bent their knees and they're sitting their backside down, it gives more chance that they won't loop it. And the other thing is that I'll play. There's a game which I play called Get Out of Here, which is on the site somewhere. And if a player doesn't sit and shoot, their group are thrown out of the exercise for about 12 seconds, and they have to come back in. And because if they don't sit and they don't shoot the ball, then obviously there's a downside for their team that they're told to get out of here. And funny enough, it's one of them kids will say, "What game do you want to play?" They want to play Get Out of Here, which is quite an aggressive game with lots of punishment, but they love it for some reason. But it's just that every player should have this idea that they can get more power by leaving their fingers towards the target. Obviously, as they get better and they become more sophisticated, then they start to be able to spin the ball and do things like that.
If I can, there are that's the looping pass, and where you just want a direct pass with the pointing your fingers towards the target. That sort of thing. I mean, we've been trying to coach since under sixes, and it still to me looks like it needs to be broken down into little things, but that's very dry for the kids. There's far too much standing around. If you're saying, okay, well, we need to have our hands away from the body because you can't push through the ball if you're shoulders hunched in. You've got a 10-point grip. Why have you got the and just breaking it down? I think it's one of the reasons. Yes, that we're changing up our coaching so that I'm not in charge of making things dull for people. But how do we do that so that the passes are going direct instead of floating in the air?
Well, I mean, the thing is that you can make skills dull, but if somebody's really motivated to become better, dull doesn't matter to them. So there is a sort of range of dullness in it. So if we can make it matter in a skills session, then it will matter to them in getting it right. So one game I play is a pass race. So this is a race. You've got a winners. So first of all, I talk about a dull skill first. Is sometimes it's called pocket to rocket, but to pass the ball this way with more. See if I can get this arm right here. Yeah, that's not too bad. It looks about right. Is that the players can pass with the ball outside their hip?
Yeah,
they'll get more power.
Right.
So that's just a little tip you can give to the players. But let's play something called pass race. So this is definitely on the site. It's called. I think it's called a 2-pass race.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this works well because the players want to win the game. So they have to pass quickly. So initially, I have them maybe 2 meters apart. But let's have them 5 meters apart. And player stands here with the ball. Player stands here. They start on the cones like this. Player stands there. So you've got, that's one team, and you've got one team, one team, one team, one team, and then they've got to race 8 meters. So there's a pass to pass to pass. So if you loop this pass, you're not going to win the game. And they may start to work it out, or you might say, look at this team here, or I'm going to give you a tip, pass the ball off your hip, or I'm going to give you a tip, shoot the ball. So that's the first part of the game. The second one is, so you play that game. So pass, this guy sprints forward, and they've got to beat the other teams to there. So let's say you've got a slowish team here, and a quick team. So let's say a slow team here. So the quick team may start there in the first round, and you may start them back there in the second round, third round. So they've been a bit of a handicap system. And then you say, right, the first player's got to start on this cone. The next player can stand, next 2 players can start any distance back from the cones they want. And then they've got them running onto the ball. So there you have, Alex, a game. And because they want to win, because it matters, then they're going to pass the ball out. Then you say, how does this help us to score tries? And hopefully they'll start coming up with the answers. Well, we can get the ball to the guy who is in space to score. So is that a helpful way perhaps to change it up?
Yeah. Yes, that idea that make it matter, as you say. So they're winning the race by using the skill that we've just tried to reinforce.
Yeah.
And then we can come back to it with that in mind.
Yeah, and the thing is that you sometimes you do have to do a bit of demonstration, a couple of repetitions. The thing about a repetition is that I don't know if you play golf. I play far too much golf, but it's great if you're on a driving range because you get your driver out and you're not the first one miles left, and not the next one along the ground, but you hit the third one is a lot better because you can remember what to do. The trouble is, you stand on the first tee, and you don't get 3 chances at the driver. So repetition is quite good just to remind yourself of what we're going to do. Oh yeah, I've got to do this with my hands. I've got, as you said, 10 fingers would be better. If I want to get a bit better pass, I want to start the ball on my hip, pocket to rocket, flip my hands. So you get through that. Right, we're going to play the passing race now. Let's go. And as they're going, you say, remind yourselves what you can do to be better. There's a really good thing called the rule of 3. I don't know if you've come across the rule. Well, there's lots of rules of 3, but in terms of coaching. So the best person to correct a player is the player himself. So that's the rule of 1. This player here, can they, oh yeah, I know what I've got to do. I can remember now. I need to pass off the hip or I need to shoot the hands. The rule of 2, what do you think that is?
Another player.
Yeah, another player. And then the rule of 3
is the coach.
The coach, yeah. So you probably given the information at the start of the season or at various different points, but within the game, the best moment, and this is a lovely moment, is when you can see a player
going in.
They're doing it. They're going, that's what I've got to do. And you can say, yeah, I'm not. They might miss a tackle, and you can see them actually doing the you need to do this and do that. Or they go into a ruck and they go off their feet, and you can just see them starting to next time I need to go. Or they've got someone saying next time Dan you need to go in like that. That's a magical moment. It happens not as much as we want, but you've cracked it when they're starting to do that. And the better players will start to do that, and that's where they can do positive reinforcement. Don't if they make a mistake, what can you do to help each other? Yeah.
Great. Thanks very much.
Anything more? The thing is, I can go on for hours. So, but don't. And also, obviously, you've got my email. So, fire me emails if there's stuff that I can support you with. Rupert, where are you based?
I'm down in Hampshire, a little town called Alresford.
All right, okay.
Yeah,
I don't
so
know that so well. What's the next biggest
just kind
place?
of north. Well, kind of just it's just. I'm just getting my bearings down. It's just east of Winchester,
All right,
effectively.
okay, yeah. All right. Good rugby land.
Yeah.
Well, guys, if there's anything else, jump in now. If there's stuff that you think of afterwards, please email me. I'll send this out in the next couple of days as well. So
Brilliant.
and with a few bits and pieces as well added in.
Brilliant. Thank
Thanks
you
a lot.
very much for your time. Cheers,
All
Tom.
right. Cheers, guys. Thanks very much.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.